Welcome to this exciting study. Before we jump in, prayers for the Watchmen channels are very much appreciated. And also, since we are still here, TGC invites the Rapture Brethren to select the membership button on this channel, The Gospels Compared, as a thank you. Members who bless TGC receive early access to extra content, and members may request a summary video of their choice. Okay, so today's full summary is derived from the source channel The Bible Place, and you'll find a link below in the description box. I'm just so excited to dive into the deep theological implications of this study. Let's get started. So, will graves actually open at the rapture? I mean, it kind of sounds like an absolute given, right? For centuries, art, tradition, and just our own imaginations have pictured the ground violently bursting open at the end of the age. But we're going to explore a highly counterintuitive premise today. According to our source material, the graves of believers at the pre-tribulation rapture will actually not open. No, they're going to remain completely undisturbed, untouched, and perfectly intact.
All right, let's dive right into section 1. The unopened grave mystery, an unprophesied secret.
Now, biblically speaking, a mystery is a truth or an event deliberately hidden by God in the Old Testament. It was kept entirely secret until it was explicitly revealed much later to the Apostle Paul. Just think about the profound awe in that. God literally, intentionally concealed the mechanics of the rapture. It's classified as this kind of hidden mystery, which completely sets it apart from the heavily prophesied, highly anticipated event known as the first resurrection that happens on the day of the Lord. Moving right along to section 2, Christ's transcendent glorified body, a biblical precedent. If we really want to understand what happens to a believer's physical body during the rapture, we've got to start by examining the resurrected body of Christ himself. Philippians 3:21 tells us that, because our ultimate citizenship is in heaven, Jesus shall change our vile body, that it may be fashioned like unto his glorious body. You see, there's a stark contrast here between our current, fragile, mortal human bodies and the glorious, matter-transcending nature of Christ's body. At the rapture, a believer's physical form is instantly radically transformed to match Jesus' exact glorious state. How amazing is that? To get a real sense of what a matter-transcending body looks like in action, we just need to follow the progression of events in Matthew 28. Picture this, the Roman guards are absolutely terrified, there's a massive heavy stone sealing the tomb, and then a great earthquake hits. Now usually we assume the angel descended and rolled the stone away so that Jesus could finally exit, right? But the timeline here is incredible. Jesus was actually already gone. He passed right through the solid rock of the tomb long before the earth ever shook or the angel even arrived. The stone was moved simply to show the witnesses that he was no longer there, not to let him out. We see another breathtaking example of this physics-defying reality over in John chapter 20. Picture the disciples huddled together in a room. The doors are completely shut and securely locked because they're absolutely terrified of the authorities outside. Yet, seemingly out of nowhere, Jesus just came and stood in the midst of them. Just as he did in Luke 24, when he vanished from sight at will, a glorified body is simply not bound by earthly physics. Solid doors and thick stone walls, they just don't matter anymore. And this brings us to a really powerful modern analogy, the solid concrete vault. Think about how a believer is buried today. A heavy casket is lowered into the ground, often sealed inside a thick, impenetrable, solid concrete vault, which is then covered by tons and tons of packed dirt. Well, according to this study, a transformed, glorified believer will pass right through that heavy casket, right through the thick concrete, and up through all those tons of dirt at the rapture. Just like Jesus phased through the stone tomb, the modern believer will rise without displacing a single ounce of soil or ever even lifting the vault's lid. The mechanics behind all this are beautifully summarized in 1 Corinthians 15. The transformation happens in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye. Just think about how incredibly fast that is. The twinkling of an eye is literally a fraction of a millisecond. It happens so extraordinarily fast that the physical universe simply doesn't even have time to react. There is absolutely zero time for the earth to splay open, for dirt to be moved, or for quiet cemeteries to be physically dug up. The physics of the event occur instantly, totally bypassing the natural world entirely. Okay, let's transition to section 3, when graves must open, exploring physical disturbances. So if rapture graves don't open, we need to understand the profound biblical reasons behind the times when physical graves actually had to be disturbed. Right after Christ's crucifixion in Matthew 27, graves were explicitly, physically opened. Now, this must have been a totally bizarre and astounding sight for the people in the holy city, but why did the ground break? Well, because these saints arose with natural physical bodies. They didn't have immortal glorified bodies yet. Because they were resurrected in natural bodies, they eventually had to experience the tragedy of re-entering the realm of death years later. Because they were bound by physics, their physical graves had to burst open violently to let them out. We actually see this exact physical requirement again in Old Testament prophecy. Ezekiel 37:12 says, "Behold, O my people, I will open your graves and cause you to come up out of your graves." Our source material heavily emphasizes that the highly prophesied event known as the first resurrection explicitly requires graves to physically open. And this is because the bodies rising at that specific time are natural, mortal bodies. They aren't the glorified ones capable of instantly transcending solid matter. Let's move into Section 4, Two Distinct Resurrections, comparing the events. By bringing all these biblical clues together, our source makes the incredibly compelling case that the pre-tribulation rapture and the first resurrection absolutely cannot be the exact same event. They're fundamentally different in both mechanics and purpose. On one hand, we've got the rapture, a newly glorified body ascending directly to heaven, effortlessly phasing right through unopened graves. But on the other hand, we have the first resurrection, a natural body remaining on earth, absolutely requiring those physical graves to be broken and opened. The awe-inspiring differences in body type and grave action completely prove these are two entirely separate events. Furthermore, there's a really distinct destination and purpose for each group. Raptured saints go straight to the third heaven to dwell eternally with Christ. And in that glorified state, they don't reproduce. Conversely, those taking part in the first resurrection remain on earth with their natural bodies. Their specific divine purpose is to populate and repopulate the millennial kingdom over the next 1,000 years. This vital theological context explains perfectly why their physical forms must be completely different and why their graves must physically open to accommodate those natural bodies. Connecting this back to our concrete vault analogy, we can truly grasp the poetry of 1 Corinthians 15:55. "O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory?" An unopened grave is literally the ultimate proof that the grave has absolutely zero physical victory or hold over a believer. The concrete can't contain them, the dirt can't hold them down, and the ground doesn't even need to be cracked open to release them. It is an entirely 100% triumphant moment. Finally, let's explore Section 5, the millennial timeline revealed, end times chronology. Let's walk through this chronology to reveal the blueprint of history, according to the source channel. We start with the first phase, the pre-tribulation rapture of the church, where, as we've seen, graves remain completely closed. Then, following a gap in time, we enter the second phase, the tribulation period. After that, at the third phase, we see the first resurrection, where graves do indeed physically open. And this all occurs just before the fourth and final phase on this timeline, the glorious 1,000-year millennial reign of Christ on earth. So I'll leave you with this. How does understanding the mystery of unopened graves reshape your view of our glorious future? Take a moment to really let that question settle. It completely changes how we picture that instant, eye-twinkling millisecond of transformation, doesn't it? The sheer power involved is truly staggering. Thank you so much for joining us for this full summary today. Stay tuned because our next study will explore exactly what happens the very moment we arrive in the third heaven.